for the invitation. Being a banker at this time, it's challenging, right? We are pretty much walking with a bullseye on our heads. But I think it's very important that that banks get involved with a lot of dialogue as well, right? Because like one of the points that was brought up just now is that at this point in time, everyone is open to a discussion to make sure that everyone survives together, right? And there's also no reason for banks to see all the customers going down, because at the end of the day, it's even worse that way. So at this point in time, that is absolutely the principle that we must be applying. I want to say that there was a point that said that banks will become the minority in terms of the source of funding going forward. I personally don't think that will be the case, because any economy in the world will have to be led by banks as well, and also together with all the other alternatives, right? It's just that both policy, regulations, and even the bank itself will have to realign to meet the new condition and norms. So I thought today maybe my thoughts were actually to go a bit technical, because this is the first time that I'm joining the town hall. I thought of sharing some of the schemes that are available. So everyone actually knows that SRF is over already, right? And it was finished quite a fair bit of time ago, on 4th of May. I would like to say that when Bank Negara announced that they've increased it by another 5 billion to 10, that was actually the total amount that the banks had approved up until the 4th of May. So technically speaking, there weren't any more funds available for anyone to apply, right? I think we have to make that very clear to everyone, so that we have to start moving it to other schemes that are available. Now, for banks to do lending going forward, obviously security is going to become very, very key in this whole thing. So we had panelists that spoke about mortgaging assets and all. One of the things that businesses has to write on will definitely have to be the guarantee schemes that are available, because that improves the total credit position, that makes it a lot more viable for the banks to take on that credit, right? I actually have got some slides. I'm not so sure whether you all want me to go that technical to flesh out a few of this. Maybe I can get some feedback.
Well, if there are a few slides, Mr. Jeffrey, please go ahead. I think if you want to show, I'm not sure whether the audience will be able to view, but certainly we will try to give it a shot. Secretary, can you please help to load the slides?
I'll keep it really short. But can I be enabled to do the sharing?
Yes, you can do it.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you just click the share screen at the bottom there.
Yeah, I know, but it's been disabled. But never mind, it's been disabled. But I will talk through it. Right.
Hold on, Vix, can you please enable for Jeffrey?
Yes, the moment I try it.
Just give us a second, Mr. Jeffrey. I will let the secretary quickly move into that so that you can show your slides. Yeah.
For all those, I mean, today there are many schemes in the market, and sometimes, frankly, it's quite difficult to keep in touch with what is available. They have everything from micro all the way up to the large companies. So for any SMEs,
Jeff, the screen share is okay now.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that if any SME wants information on all the available funds in the market, they should just go to this smeinfo.com.my. Everything is over there. If you take the time to find out what is available for your particular segment, all the information is available there, right? What I wanted to point out is that the schemes are generally broken down into two kinds, right? One is for the smaller companies with smaller needs, and then there are subsequent schemes for the larger SMEs as well. So for the smaller ones, SRF, it's over already. There's no point asking the bank whether they have the ability to try to squeeze you in. There isn't anymore, right? So what needs to happen is that you need to start channeling it to the others that are available, such as the all economic sector. But this AES, I just want to highlight to everyone, that it is mainly for companies that are less than 7 years in vintage, not really for those established SMEs. And if you actually need to invest in automation, you should ask the banks for what you call these ADF facilities, because the total financing cost is a lot cheaper compared to if you took a normal equipment financing. And if you are in the production of food, then please do consider the agro-food facility as well. Why I'm promoting this Bank Negara funds is very, very simple. Because it allows SME access to cheap financing, right? These are Bank Negara funds. So when the banks actually distribute the funds, they can distribute it at a much cheaper price. So hence why I'm encouraging SMEs to ask for these funds first before they consider the rest, right? If you are a larger SME with larger needs, then basically you need to consider a couple of the guarantee schemes that are available. Now, the difference between this and the earlier one is these are not Bank Negara schemes. These are just guarantee schemes, right? And so what this does is that it gives you a better credit positioning when negotiating with banks, and therefore will have a much higher chance of getting financing going forward. But the financing rates for this are much higher compared to those that are under the Bank Negara funds, right? But suffice to note that SJPP recently came up with what they call a Perihatin guarantee scheme. That means they can guarantee up to an amount of 20 million ringgit. And usually there's a limitation in the amount that they will cover. This one goes up to 20 million ringgit, right? So this is something to take note now. And if you are a non-SME, you are a corporate, right, or much larger, then there is something called the Dana Jamin Perihatin scheme that has been launched. And this amount can go up to a large one, and they start with a minimum of 20 million coverage, right? I think the reason why I want to go through all of this is that I think everyone needs to be aware what is available so that you all can have a negotiation with your bankers going forward, right? Sorry, let me start one thing. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to say that while SRF is over, RHB is committed to try to help where we can, right? So what we have done is that we have leveraged on the schemes that I've said earlier on as a substitute to this SRF, right? So these are some of the terms that we are offering. Anybody that's interested can just go to our website. You drop your contact numbers and all, and we will get back to you on how to apply and process this financing for you. So as a bank, we are trying to leverage some of these things to cover for the SRF shortfall currently, because frankly, we have approved a lot of financing that also cannot qualify for the SRF because the funds have depleted. So we are trying to move them to some alternatives, right? What I would like to highlight to a few people is actually the moratorium treatments. The moratorium treatments, people need to know what is really happening. So we know that when it comes to term loan and hire purchase, all your monthly installments has been deferred. But please note that for trade, the treatment is not consistent across all banks. So generally, most banks would also extend your financing period for another 6 months, but only for ringgit denominated. If you are dealing with US dollar, you need to negotiate with your bank, right? And I would like to highlight one thing which I realized that a lot of SMEs need to be aware of. A lot of SMEs are taking advantage of the moratorium by also having overdue amounts entering 1st of April, because it's very clear the scheme will also place a moratorium over the overdues, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But please note that these overdues have to be paid immediately on day 1, which is basically 1st of October. So I would advise all SMEs to take these few months to reorganize the financials and slowly perhaps settle some of these overdues instead of getting it in one lump sum, or basically restructure it with the bank by approaching them, right? And for me, this is the best time to approach a bank. During this 6 months is a lot less than that right now. It's a great time because now that there's a pause in the obligation to pay, this is the time to reach out to your banks to start to negotiate, right? And not wait until the very end to try to work out a scheme as being mentioned. A couple of things that I want to touch on is earlier on, Dr. Raymond already said that you must keep your financials up to date. And to me, that is the most critical going forward. In fact, from a banking perspective, your chances will improve significantly if you keep your cash flow forecast up to date, right? Because I think what's very, very important now is that there is a lot of uncertainty about businesses going forward. So if you can clearly present what your business plans are with up-to-date financials and projections, definitely the opportunity of getting financing is much higher comparatively, right? Leverage on the Bank Negara schemes, as I mentioned earlier on. And if there are any issues, do engage the bank, because at this point in time, banks are definitely open to having negotiations on seeing how we can help businesses weather through these challenges. Yeah. I think finally a few points post-COVID, right? Is that I totally agree on the need for a support local campaign or a big mega sale for Malaysia, and I think industries have to be the ones spearheading this and bringing in all the other stakeholders. And I think no better way to start than if MRCA were the ones that help organize some of these things. Get the government involved, get the banks involved, because we also hold millions of consumers with credit card promo and all. Perhaps everyone can come together and have a great Malaysian sale to boost up consumption again. Because to me, getting public consumption back up quickly, to me, is the key to recovery, right? I feel digital adoption is really, really key, because if there's one thing that we realize in this crisis is across all businesses, big and small, a lot of us are not ready from a digital perspective. Many of us think that we are, but frankly, we couldn't do an end-to-end remotely, even for big banks, even for small companies. And what more for small companies when they couldn't even apply for SRF because they really have got no access to their financials to begin with, right? So I would advocate a big push towards, number one, e-commerce for your sales, and number two, automation of back-end. No one really talks about this because it's really not sexy. But I would advocate that small businesses especially consider cloud solutions as one of their possible digitalization, because number one, there's very, very low capex at the very beginning. It's subscription based, and you pay more as your business grows, or you can unsubscribe at any point in time, right? And frankly, as was mentioned earlier on, an absolute firm grasp on your cash flow. A constant review of your position is key to ensure that you are able, number one, to survive, and number two, to have a more educated discussion with your bankers. Yeah, these are some of my sharing. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Sorry, Raymond, if I could just perhaps give all the credit to in this discussion, because Mr. Jeffrey, you certainly made it very, very simple. You have simplified and with such tone and clarity. I'm sure a lot of us listening to